So the learning outcomes that I'll be covering today, and it is only a short session, it's just an hour long, is to explain what research metrics and bibliometrics is, and to understand how it can be used to demonstrate the impact or influence of research outputs. So the ideal is that you will have a better understanding of that by the end of the session. You should also be able to name the main databases and tools using to gather bibliometric data and outline the commonly used metrics. You'll be able to start at least analysing specific research areas in Scopus, and you'll have a go at analysing journals using the journal citation reports. Now, within the scope of the session, we can't cover every metric and we can't cover every source for dealing with bibliometrics. That would be a much longer course. So these are just a few learning outcomes we're going to try to achieve today together. But I will be mentioning other sources and other metrics as we go. Okay. So we've mentioned bibliometrics already. Bibliometrics is a field which analyses and measures the impact of research outputs by using quantitative methods. And I just wanted to get a sense from you of why you think bibliometrics might be helpful or useful to us. In what way would you anticipate that analysing the impact of research outputs might be a useful thing to do? So pop in the chat any thoughts you've had. Why might bibliometrics be useful to you? Thank you, Veronica, for starting us off. So identify research that is relevant in a field. Thank you, Ying. So help to generate a theme or do a literature review. Bibliometrics could help with that. Any other thoughts before I go on? Interpret indicators. Thank you, Raoul. So yes, yes, there are many indicators generated when looking at publications and their citations. Yeah, so I wondered if you could mention, Raoul, what you might want to know from such an indicator. If you have any thoughts, it's fine if not. Oh, yeah, thank you. So, for example, about a publication, the times of citations. Sure. So, looking at how many times a publication has received citations, I think that's what you mean. Yeah. Okay. And that could be for a whole publication, such as a journal title, or it could be for an individual article. So today's session is focusing on bibliometrics relating to sources, and by sources I mean journal titles, or it could also include conference proceeding titles, but we're talking generally speaking here about sources rather than individual articles or excuse me, or authors. Okay, so here are some thoughts that I had about why bibliometrics is helpful to us. So we can analyze research outputs, so we can get a sense of the quantity and the performance of research outputs. And when I say performance, I mean what impact they've had in terms of citations. Okay, it's useful just to remember that bibliometrics is purely quantitative, so it has the usual limitations of just counting quantities as opposed to knowing the reasons for citations, but still it's a useful, as Raoul says, for indicators. It can show the reach of publications, so again showing the attention that has been attracted and the kind of network of the scholarly communication that happens can be revealed by looking at bibliometrics. You can find out about new areas of research. So by following citations and by looking at categories within these sources, within these tools that we're going to look at today, you can explore new areas of research. To recognise current and potential collaborators. So some of the tools that we have at our disposal that we'll look at today can help you to understand who else is publishing in a particular category or a research area. You can identify sources in which to publish, and in my experience, this is something that's quite a popular use of bibliometrics, though it is just part of the decision-making puzzle. And it can strengthen funding and job applications. Now, this is an interesting one for me to mention. I personally wouldn't have chosen to put that on, but I know it is a motivation for some people when thinking about funding applications and job applications to mention the impact factor of a journal that they have published in as a kind of proxy for quality and a proxy for reach and impact. So that is kind of common practice, though obviously that you might want to caveat that with the fact that the impact of the journal might not be the impact of the individual publication or the author, but still it can be useful to mention. Okay. So I just wondered before we started, and again, I think if you've looked through the slides already, you might already have some clues, but I'm just interested to know whether anyone is aware of the sources or tools we can use to gather bibliometric data. Maybe this is something you've used before or something that you've heard of. Thank you, Sultan. So Google Scholar. Yeah, that's a good suggestion. I usually just put the name of the journal and impact factor into search engine. Sally, yes, that does work. So yeah, you can quickly look up a journal impact factor now just by doing a search. Ying, you said ProQuest, and I'm interested about that. So what kind of information can you find with ProQuest, I wonder, in terms of bibliometrics? I'll give you a moment to pop something in the chat, Ying, if you wanted to elaborate on that. But yes, in my experience, there are many different kind of indicators that come up in the various literature searching databases or bibliographic databases that we use. So we've mentioned a few there for Google Scholar. You can just look up the impact factor, usually on a publisher's website. ProQuest is an information provider, and they may generate bibliometric data just within their database of sources as well. So the other ones I wanted to mention today are Web of Science and Insights. So that's a product created by Clarivate, which is an information provider. We have Scopus and SciVal. Scopus we'll be looking at Scopus today, and SciVal is a sister product to Scopus, which is really used more at an institutional level by research groups and research directors really digging into bibliometrics. There is also a product called Dimensions, which is relatively new, but again tracks citations, but also brings in other metrics related to research outputs. And Sultan mentioned Google Scholar as well. So Google Scholar also tracks citations and produces some metrics. And there are actually further metrics that can be generated from Google Scholar citation data by using a piece of software called Publish or Perish. Don't know if anyone's seen that, but again, if you want to really dig into Google Scholar citation and bibliometric data, then you usually need to use a secondary piece of software to do that. So all of these sources index different collections of research outputs, so they all have different coverage, and for that reason they will all generate different metrics. Okay, so even if you're looking at exactly the same say journal title, you've chosen a journal title, the metrics will be different within each of these sources. Okay, and because it's just based on a different data set. So that's something to be aware of. Today we'll be looking at Scopus and Web of Science only. So again, it's a shortish session, but it's just to get you started. So let's get started. I just wanted to introduce you to a few of the bibliometric indicators that are out there, and there are very many, okay, relating to journal titles or sources as the focus. But I'll just mention a few important ones here. So we have total publications. So that would be the total number of research outputs. So that could be articles, books, book chapters, reviews, conference proceedings. And that could relate to either a source, so how many say, articles a particular journal title has produced in a particular year, or it could be the number of research outputs for a particular research topic that you have defined, for example, with a keyword search, or a topic category. So that is defined as by the database. We have citation counts. So again, that's the number of citations to a particular set of publications. So for yourself, for example, it could be citations to your own publications in total. We also have citations per publication. So that's the average number of times a set of research outputs has been cited. Okay, so that may be over time. We have the field-weighted citation impact. So this is an interesting one. This is the ratio of citations received relative to the expected world average for the subject field, the publication type, and the publication year. And the field-weighted citation impact can apply to a single research output, such as a journal article, or it could relate to a group of research outputs. And this is an interesting one because there is an attempt with the field-weighted citation impact to kind of normalize and give a relative figure for how that, say, for example, article is performing in relation to the average performance of a similar output in a particular subject field. And that kind of helps to deal with kind of disciplinary differences, because a lot of citations may accrue for one particular discipline. For example, medicine is a highly cited discipline, whereas within the social sciences or arts and humanities, the quantity of citations tends to be smaller. And that's not a judgment of quality, that is just normal for that discipline. We also have outputs in top percentiles. So again, this is another relative indicator. So this is the number or percentage of research outputs in the top most cited publications in the world, in the UK, or in a specific country. And it can also actually relate to a specific discipline. So again, similar to the field-weighted citation impact, it's a kind of ranking system. And finally, the one that you're possibly the most familiar with, one that Sally mentioned earlier, is the journal impact factor. And this is the number of citations received in a calendar year to documents published in that particular journal in the preceding 2 years. Okay, and this one is available in the Web of Science and also in the journal citation reports, which we will look at today. So the journal impact factor is proprietary to Clarivate, who own the Web of Science and the journal citation reports. Okay, so that's a big number of metrics that I've introduced to you, and as I've said, there are very many more. And to reiterate, some of these are available in Web of Science, some are available in Scopus, and others are available in yet other tools. Okay, and depending on the source you're using, the quantities will be different. So moving slightly on now to one of the excuse me, one of the purposes that I mentioned at the beginning of why we might want to use bibliometrics is to help us decide where to publish, so which source to publish in. Now, it's important for me to mention at this stage that looking at bibliometrics is just one way to help you decide where to publish, but it shouldn't be the only factor in helping you to decide. Okay, so I'm just going to, I'll talk a bit more about that later on. But for now, can I just ask you, where would you usually find journals to publish? So how would you usually go about deciding where to publish or finding a list of candidate journals for your own piece? And you may not have published anything yet, and that's okay, but where might you find journals to publish? Found a relevant conference and then looked where they published, if at all. From a supervisor's suggestions, I'd ask my supervisor for suggestions. Absolutely perfectly fine. No need to feel like that's not the right answer. That is completely legitimate. So to build on those, yeah, so if you've been to a conference looking to see where either those conference proceedings were published, or where authors, whether speakers had published anything and where they'd published is quite a good approach. Yep. Asking your supervisor, absolutely. Your supervisor will be really knowledgeable about the sources within the field. So speaking to experienced peers and mentors and supervisors and colleagues working in the field is really good. They may be editors on journals. They may be able to speak to you about where they think a good place to publish would be. So today I'm going to introduce you to bibliometrics as another way. So perhaps to get a list together to speak to your supervisor about and say, what do you think about this? Or it could be that your supervisor has said, well, maybe aim for this journal and you want to check it out. Okay, so I'm going to start by showing you how you can use Scopus to analyze the sources in a specific research area. Okay, and this might be useful if you're hoping to publish your journal article, but you just want to see where other articles on a similar topic are generally published. Okay. So you can see which journals, institutions, authors, and countries publish in the area in your research area the most. So you can look at those kind of top performers, if you like. You can identify as well which funding sponsors are invested in your area. As well, you can get that information out, a little bit of that information out of Scopus. And you can become aware of which outputs are receiving the largest amounts of citations in your field. So this is some of the reasons why you might want to approach it this way. So I will talk it through, I will give you a demonstration, and then I'm just going to give you a little bit of time to try it out yourself. Okay, so we will have a pause after I do this demonstration where you can go into your browser, you can log into Scopus, and you can have a go with what I've told you how to do, what I've told you to do. So let me just bear with me a moment while I open up my browser feed and share it with you. Okay, so hopefully you can see that I'm sharing the library webpage at the moment. So Scopus is paid for by the library, and so you need to go through the library to access it, just to make sure that you're getting access to what we've paid for on your behalf. So if you start at the library homepage, library.leeds.ac.uk, and in the search box in the middle of the page, I'm going to put in Scopus and click search. And we'll come through to the library catalogue. If you haven't already signed in, you will usually be prompted to sign in at the top bar here. So I would recommend that you do sign in. I think I've already signed in, so it's not prompting me to do that. And then click on here at the top, it says go to Scopus. Okay, we'll then be taken through to Scopus, and some of you may have used Scopus for literature searching in the past. Good, okay. Hopefully that'll work a bit better now, so you'll be able to see all of my tabs, which I think will help. So I'm in Scopus and I begin on the document search screen, and this is the one that we want to be on for the purpose of this demonstration, because what I'm going to do is just put in a really brief keyword search. So I'm just going to put in peatlands, which is just a really, really basic search. I'm not going to craft a really long search here, though you could if you wanted to add a few different keywords here. And I'm going to put in emissions as well. Okay, and click search. So this does a search of Scopus. You can see we've brought back 1,691 document results, and it is this set of results which we can use as a basis to analyze a research topic. So that's what I was talking about when I was saying you can look up a research topic and you can that's similar to the one that you're interested in. You've done a really quick search to try to capture a set of those, and you could do a more advanced search if you wish. And then we can use this set of publications to then analyze and generate some metrics and dig deeper into the quantitative element here. So within Scopus, you can use the various limits here. So for example, you might want to limit to a particular date range if you're just looking at a topic and the data, you want the data over, say, for example, a 10-year period. I'm just going to leave it as it is to get a nice big set of data. But straight away from this screen, you can see Scopus is helping by drawing out the quantities published in each year, the author names, and again, these are ranked by quantity, so number of times. So straight away, you can see how bibliometrics and these quantitative details that are being captured by the source can help. We can see the broad subject areas, and these subject areas are defined by Scopus, and also the document types. And interestingly, you could stop right here if you wanted to, and you can just see the source titles of the most commonly published, the most common source titles which publish articles about my topic, peatland emissions. Okay, so you can see these are journal titles, and you could stop there. You could just think, okay, well, I'm just going to look at the top 10 and I'll go to the publishers' websites and I'll investigate those. Okay, but we can go a bit further than that. So what you can do is at the top of the page, at the top of the list of results, sorry, you can click on all. So I'll zoom in a little bit so to give you a bit more of a view if you're looking at a small screen. Hopefully that's a bit bigger. So I've clicked on all, and this selects all of the 1,691 documents. And then there's a button here at the top called Analyze Search Results. And what this enables me to do is see some visualizations based on my keyword search of peatlands and emissions. I've got a date range here of 1985 to 2023. I can tweak that here if I wish. But if we scroll down, we can see we have some visualizations based on the bibliometric data for that set of results. So we can see over time the quantity of publications in this topic area and how that has increased over time. So we can see that this is a live research topic. Don't worry that you'll always see a sharp decline at the end of the graph, and that's just a matter of time before that picks up. It takes time for these things to be published and to be indexed within the tool. But if we scroll down, we can see these cards which give us a link through to more data. So an interesting one here is the number of documents per year by source. We see documents by author. So again, this is a visualization of that information we saw on the previous screen. We can also see the documents by affiliation. So these are institutions that are publishing in this area. And this can give you a really good indication of the locations of this research and the groups that are working in this area. We can also see documents by country or territory, documents by type, and again, we can see in this kind of donut pie chart, we can see that the big blue section is articles, but we have other document types there as well. We have documents by subject area. So again, these are the broad categories of subject area. And finally, by funding sponsor. So again, this is where we can see who the big funders are of each of those, of this topic area. So you can choose any of these to click on them, and then you go into a panel which shows you some more data. So here we can see this is the source documents per source per year. So this is showing me just the quantity of documents produced by the top sources. You can select which sources you want to compare over here in the panel at the side. They are ranked by quantity. And again, quantity is, is just that. It's quantity, not necessarily, there's no indication right here about quality as such. It is just the quantity. But you can hover over any of these over in the graph view to kind of single out So it may be that you wanted to hit a journal which is publishing a high quantity of information similar to yours, so that you know it's got a good readership. Okay. We can also go through, I'm not going to do it right now, but you can also go through to compare different sources by clicking on the link at the top of the graph here. So you can choose 10 sources and you can analyze those sources alongside each other using different metrics such as the site score metric, which is the equivalent, the close equivalent to the journal impact factor within Scopus, and other kind of journal rankings if you're wanting to have a look more deeply at the kind of the indicators of influence of each journal. But that, again, is just one way that you can very quickly do a keyword search and have a look in Scopus and try to pick out some of the interesting looking journals. Okay, if you click on any of the journal titles, which I'm just going to do now, it will take you through to the source. So this is the journal page within Scopus. And again, it will give you some information about the journal. It will take you through to those top indicators here, though I have to say without any context, you may or may not find that useful. But again, you can see the site score. You can see the percentile in terms of its performance within the category. So that's a little bit more helpful. And you can also jump straight through to the journal homepage, where you can crucially have a look at the aims and the scope of the journal. And that's the other bit of information that you need to decide whether that your idea for publication is well suited to the particular source that you're interested in. So it's now over to you. I will just go back to my slides. Can you just bear with me a second while I do that? So if you haven't been following me along, which I know is tricky to do when you're watching, I will give you a little bit of time now to have a look at this. So I wanted to give you 10 minutes, but as things have taken a little bit longer to sort out today, I will just give you 5 minutes. So go to Scopus, do a keyword search in your subject area, and then have a play around with that analyze function. Okay, everybody, hopefully you have had the chance to have a little play. I'm sorry it wasn't quite as long as we planned, but hopefully you've had a chance to have a little look in Scopus at your results and try to analyse those. So Ying has posted a question in the chat around trying to find out which outputs are gaining the most attention. Now, if this is per output in terms of individual output, i.e. the articles within Scopus, and again, let me just try to share my screen with you if it doesn't take too long. Hopefully you can see that now. Within my list of results, I can resort this list based on the number of times cited. So this is more to do with individual articles, but you can see this figure on the far right, sorry, not on the left, on the far right, you can see this figure, the number of times cited, to see the most highly performing individual research outputs. If you want to see to compare different journal titles and their citation performance, that is actually on a different screen. So again, we select all of the results, we go into analyze the search results. Here we can see the number of publications per year, but if we want to look at the number of citations per source, we can click on the documents per year per source, and then we can use the compare sources and view site score. It's a small link up on the right hand side, and this will take us into a slightly different Scopus product where we're looking at the different sources, and you can see if we go further down here, we've got citations per year. So this is tracking for these journals that have been selected here. the different citation performance of each journal. So you can see for this one, Science of the Total Environment is the one that is tracking the highest citations in comparison to the others. Okay, so it is the previous screen on which you can go to documents per year per source. You can choose the different sources and then you can click compare. Okay, I'm conscious of time, so I'm going to move on now to the next part of the session. So again, bear with me while I switch back to my slides. Yeah, so the cite score is a metric based on citation performance, but if you're looking at pure quantities of citation, then you're looking at the citation count. Yeah. Okay. So we're going to move on, and I'm going to be, again, fairly rapid about this. So now we'll look, this is more in terms of your questioning, I think, more analysing sources rather than a whole selection of results based on a research topic. So for this, we're going to move away from Scopus and we're going to look at the Journal Citation Reports, which is another product, and this one is based on the Web of Science data. So Web of Science, as many of you will know, is a very large bibliographic database that also tracks citations. And I would say Web of Science and Scopus are kind of competitor products, but they're both different in terms of coverage and scale. Okay, so Journal Citation Reports, or the JCR, is based on all the journals from the Web of Science, and it's grouped into categories within 2 indexes. I won't go into this in too much detail. There is also a module of Scopus, which we just briefly looked at there, called Scopus Sources, and that does a similar thing. So looks at all of the journals within Scopus and produces different categories and different indicators based on that data set. We also have the CIMAGO Journal and Country Rank, which is based on Scopus data, but it is analysis done using different metrics, and I'm not going to touch on that today, but I can send around some further information, and there is information in the slides as well. So what I'm going to look at now is the Journal Citation Reports. Okay, so I will be going to the library catalogue again. I'll be searching Journal Citation Reports. We'll be looking at the categories and we'll be looking at the metrics. Okay, so again, bear with me while I switch my sharing over to the browser. So I'm back at the library catalogue and I'm going to type in Journal Citation Reports, and again it comes up right at the top. If you're signed in, you'll be authenticated straight through to Journal Citation Reports. And here we are in the Journal Citation Reports interface, and it looks similar to the Web of Science. We have got several different options here, but I'm going to just choose the one for purposes of the demonstration today. So I'm going to focus on categories because we've been talking about subject categories. So I'm going to pick this icon here called categories. And what this is enabling me to do is have a look at all the journals that have been assigned to a particular subject category within the Web of Science and the Journal Citation Reports, and then we can have a look at the different ways to that bibliometrics is used to rank and give us some insights into those different journal titles. So to stick with my theme on environment, I'm going to scroll down to environment. So I can click on environment and there are various subcategories here. So I'll pick ecology for the purpose of today's demonstration. So you can see there are 1,690 journals within this category. And if I click on ecology here, I've got 2 options, and this relates to the different indexes within the Web of Science, but I'm going to choose the Science Citation Index, which is the top one. Okay, so within the field of ecology, in the Journal Citation Reports, so this is a category ranking of all of the different journals within this category. And this view is currently sorted by the journal impact factor. Again, I can zoom in a little bit, but unfortunately, I don't think I can zoom in a lot on this screen without losing some of the information. But here we go. I think that's probably better for you. So you can see if we rank by the latest journal impact factor, which gives us a figure here for the top one, which is 20.589, we can see the journal names down the side here. So if you're specifically looking for example, quartile 1, high performing journal titles as a route to publication, then this is a way that you can get a list. You can, similar to how we saw in Scopus, you can click on any of these journals and, well, maybe zoom out a little bit now, it's a bit close, and you can see this is the kind of landing page for the journal within the report, tells you the categories it's in, and it talks you through here the data behind the journal impact factor, the items that kind of fed into the journal impact factor, and the calculation, and so on. Okay. Other metrics within here, and there are many that aren't even shown on this screen. We've got the total citations, we've got the quartile. If I zoom out a little bit, we can also click on customize, and there are lots of different indicators within journal citation reports, and you can choose to explore these separately. Okay, so I know it's been really quick, but I just wanted to give you a chance to go through and have a look. So if you go through to the library catalogue and search for journal citation reports, you then come through to the categories page, and you can have a look at the different categories and explore those. That will be a great activity for the next 5 minutes. Okay, and then I will have to just do the last part of the session. Okay. You can, of course, continue to explore the huge amount of information contained in the journal citation reports outside of the session. Excuse me. It's worth noting when you click on a particular journal title in the citation reports, you can see all of the indicators generated. So you'll be able to scroll down and see a vast quantity of visualizations and indicators for each journal. Okay, so just moving on then, this slide is really for your reference. It's just a summary of the data sources used to find journals and analyze journal level metrics. So we've got the journal citation reports, Scopus source module, and the SJR, the SIMAGO journal rank. Okay, so that's for your reference, more of a handout there. I'm not going to speak through all of that, but it's worth you knowing that there are other options. The final bit of the session, I just wanted to mention about responsible use of metrics. So responsible metrics is the appropriate and responsible use of quantitative indicators in the assessment of research performance. So some of you will be aware that if we're focusing purely on citations, then it can introduce different motivations for researchers and for journals to try to boost their citations. And at all times, journals and publishers and producers of metrics are trying to balance this desire to be able to quantify and to make judgments using quantitative data, but also try to kind of eradicate the kind of bias and any kind of game playing that can be introduced. So Leeds has a responsible metrics statement, which has 7 guiding principles, because metrics can be used for lots of different reasons and not always for good. So, for example, when we're looking at journal level metrics, it's important to understand that that is looking at the performance of the journal. So not particularly of the authors. Okay, so not every author that produces something in a journal, even if it's a journal impact factor 20 and that's a high rank, you can't really use that as a proxy for the performance of an author. It can indicate the reach of the author, but you know, in terms of promotion and things like that. There are various principles that we need to kind of make sure that we're balancing judgments like that with actual kind of evidence, really, and we use peer review as well as just the quantitative. In terms of journals, it's also really, really important that we think about, when we're deciding where to publish, it's important that we think about the readership, the aims and the scope of the journal, the rigor of the peer review process, compliance with any kind of university open access policies and other sorts of policies as well when deciding where to publish. So the journal impact factor or the site score metric is not the only piece of that decision-making puzzle. It's really important for me to stress that because we all need to engage with these principles. So please do take a little time to have a look at the research, the responsible metrics statement, specifically that around deciding where to publish. Okay. And I also just wanted to mention in the last couple of minutes some of the factors that can affect the value of a research metric. And again, you can spend a little bit more time on this if you use this as a handout. But just to mention that size of the kind of producing organization or university or institute, or even the individual researchers, will affect the metrics. Okay, so if there's not much data, then the metrics are not going to be as robust. Okay, so if there's a small sample size, as you'll all know, that can affect the metric. Disciplinary patterns is a really important one, and I mentioned this briefly earlier. So each research area or discipline have got their own publication and citation habits and norms, which will differ from others. So a high-performing paper in medicine might get 400 citations, but a high-performing paper in the humanities might get 2, and that's fine for that particular subject discipline. Okay. In terms of quality, citation counts indicate impact, attention, and prominence, but we don't always know why something was cited. Okay. Again, you can read these on the screen here, but just a good point to mention as well that review articles tend to attract more citations than original research articles, and that tends to be because they are giving the overarching position on a particular research topic, and so they are often relied on as a kind of as a review of a particular topic, and therefore they become highly cited. And again, that can feed into the journal title itself. So a journal that only publishes reviews will generally receive more citations than a smaller journal which is focused entirely on original research. You can have a look at these other factors in your own time, because I realise we've got to the end of the session now. But just to mention, this has been a really short session. We've got a lot more information on our research metrics web pages. I'll mention again the responsible metrics statement, which I do recommend you have a look at, especially if you're being asked to provide metrics based on either your own performance or for journal publishing decisions. If you have any questions, please do contact us for help and advice at the email address you can see on the screen.